Hi, thanks for choosing Dead Speaks, highlighting crimes, convictions, found dead, or still missing. One moment, please.
Little boy wasn't Doty's only target.
Mr. Doty was an engine of violence on a killing spree with absolutely no sense of humanity.
After killing Tyshawn, Doty wanted to go back to the park to shoot all of the kids playing, but he couldn't because Chicago police were already on the scene.
His original plan was to torture this child by kidnapping and cutting off his fingers and his ears.
It was a crisp fall afternoon on Chicago's South Side. The leaves were changing, and so was the world of a young boy named Tyshawn Lee. Just 9 years old, Tyshawn was the kind of kid you remembered. His smile lit up a room, and his energy was magnetic. A fourth grader at Joplin Elementary, Tyshawn was never far from his basketball. Most days you would find him at Dawes Park, weaving between taller kids on the court. He was fearless, and he was fast too. But on November 2nd, 2015, that ball would bounce one final time. That afternoon, wearing his school uniform and clutching his basketball like he always did, Tyshawn walked away from school, completely unaware that his innocent trust was about to be betrayed. It was early afternoon, broad daylight, when Tyshawn was approached by Dwright Boone-Doty, a member of the Bang Bang Gang, a faction of the Black Peace Stone. Boone-Doty wasn't acting on impulse. He was executing a plan, a cold, calculated mission, fueled by revenge. See, earlier that year, a string of shootings between rival gangs had escalated tensions on the South Side. Among the victims was Corey Morgan's brother, killed in a hail of gunfire, and Corey's mother was also shot in that exchange. Corey blamed Tyshawn's father, Pierre Stokes, a member of the Gangster Disciples, a rival gang. Tyshawn, tragically, has become the easiest target. Boone-Doty spotted him near the Dawes Park, and that's where he made his move. Witnesses would later say he played with Tyshawn's basketball, chatted with him like an older cousin might. He even offered to buy him a snack. Just enough kindness to make Tyshawn feel safe. But that safety was a lie. Boone-Doty led the 9-year-old down a narrow alley, just out of sight, out of reach. And there, with no mercy, he opened fire. Multiple shots at close range. Tyshawn's small body found just feet from his basketball, the same one he carried so many times before. Only this time, he wouldn't be dribbling that basketball home. Again, the plan to kill Tyshawn wasn't random. It was retaliation. On October 13th, 2015, just weeks before Tyshawn's murder, Corey Morgan attended a parole meeting. Also in attendance was a rival gang member by the name of Christopher Smith. During said meeting, Smith allegedly called someone, instructing them to bring firearms to the meeting. Darlene Jones, Morgan's mother, waited for him outside. As she did, she noticed something. A silver car with tinted windows and an X on the license plate parked nearby. When Morgan came out the building and climbed into the passenger seat of his mother's car, the silver car followed them. As they drove down Lafayette Avenue, the vehicle moved in. Just as Jones prepared to turn right on 83rd Street, the silver car cut her off and out of nowhere, another vehicle slid in behind, trapping them. Then came an ambush. Multiple men jumped out, opened fire on the passenger side. Jones was shot once in the arm. Morgan was hit 11 times, his body riddled with bullets. He died at the scene. Authorities would later name the shooters Christopher Smith and Khalil Yamin, both members of the Killer Ward, faction of the Gangster Disciples. This was no longer a typical street feud. To them, it felt like a declaration. Families were no longer off limits. Morgan's grief morphed into vengeance. He blamed Pierre Stokes, Tyshawn's father, and a well-known gangster disciple for the ambush. Instead of going after Stokes directly, Morgan targeted the most vulnerable person connected to him, his 9-year-old son. To carry out the vicious hit, Morgan enlisted Dwright Boone-Doty, an enforcer, and Kevin Edwards, who acted as the getaway driver. They tracked Tyshawn's routine, watched him after school, and waited for their moment. This was personal, but much more personal than they understood. And it was about to shock an entire city. In the hours and days that followed Tyshawn's murder, the Chicago Police Department faced a grim but urgent mission. Find out who killed a 9-year-old boy in cold blood and why. The community was shaken. The crime scene, a quiet alley where kids once walked to school, had become the epicenter of the city's outrage. Detectives began piecing together leads, and whispers on the streets grew louder. Surveillance footage, eyewitness statements, phone records. All of it began to point in one direction: Corey Morgan and his gang. After weeks of surveillance and gathering intelligence, authorities made their move. On November 25th, 2015, Corey Morgan was taken into custody. But the case was far from closed.
Is the face of a cold-blooded child killer. Dwright Boone-Doty is now charged with killing a 9-year-old Tyshawn Lee.
Police say Doty and 2 other men, Corey Morgan and Kevin Edwards, were set on killing as many people connected to a rival gang as they could as retaliation for a gang shooting that killed Morgan's brother and wounded his mother.
Shortly after the shooting, Corey Morgan stated that since his brother was killed and his mother had been shot, he was going to kill grandmas, mothers, and children. At one point, Doty set up a surveillance of Tyshawn's grandmother so he could kill her in order to draw out rival gang members.
That's because the 3 men believed Tyshawn's father was responsible for the shooting that killed Morgan's brother. But the plan changed on November 2nd when the 3 men spotted Tyshawn playing in Dawes Park. Say Doty lured Tyshawn to this nearby alley by promising to buy him whatever he wanted from a store.
Once they reached the middle of the alley, Doty took out a gun and shot Tyshawn multiple times at close range.
A judge ordered Doty held without bail today. Live in the newsroom, Mai Martinez, CBS 2 News. Rob and Erica.
Okay, thanks for that.
Each arrest pulled back the curtain a little further on a plot that stunned even the most seasoned investigators. All 3 men were ultimately charged with first-degree murder, accused of conspiring to take the life of an innocent child in one of the most chilling acts of gang retaliation the city has ever seen. The courtroom was silent, tense, each seat filled with family members, reporters, and a city eager for justice. Prosecutors painted a vivid and unfortunately disturbing portrait of what had transpired. A gang hit disguised as a moment of trust. A young boy used as a pawn in a deadly feud. Over the course of the trial, jurors listened to harrowing testimony. They watched the grainy surveillance footage and heard from the witnesses who spoke of the planning and the aftermath. The most chilling evidence came from the recorded jailhouse conversation. Boone-Doty, unaware he was being recorded, casually described how he lured Tyshawn with the promise of a snack and played with his basketball before executing him in cold blood. After days of testimony and hours of deliberation, the verdict was in.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Corey Morgan, guilty of first-degree murder.
Guilty as charged, 31-year-old Corey Morgan today became the third and final person convicted in the 2015 murder of 9-year-old Tyshawn Lee.
We are appreciative of the jury verdicts, both today's and yesterday's.
Morgan was accused of orchestrating the boy's murder after his brother was killed and his mother injured in an earlier shooting attributed to the boy's father. Morgan's attorneys are already planning an appeal. The evidence against their client, they say, is entirely circumstantial. Morgan's is the second guilty verdict related to this case in as many days. A separate jury deliberated for less than 2.5 hours Thursday before convicting Dwright Boone-Doty of pulling the trigger after luring the boy into an alley. 3 eyewitnesses placed Morgan in the getaway vehicle, which was driven by a third defendant, Kevin Edwards. Edwards pled guilty before trial.
Tyshawn's murder sent shockwaves through Chicago and the country. A 9-year-old boy executed in an alley became the face of a city's heartbreak. His mother, Karla Lee, stood outside the courthouse and told reporters, "I'm happy my son got what he deserved. It's justice." But even justice came with shadows. Just days after burying her son, Karla faced public backlash for purchasing a new car after raising thousands in donations. No laws were broken, but the moment stirred unease. What should have been a time of mourning became clouded by controversy. Still, Tyshawn's case laid bare the brutal toll of gang retaliation and the innocent lives left in its path. And in a final tragic turn, violence came full circle. In 2023, Tyshawn's father, Pierre Stokes, was convicted for retaliatory shooting tied to his son's death. Just months after the funeral, he opened fire on men he believed were connected to the murder. The charges? Attempted murder, aggravated battery, and illegal weapons possession. For a family already drowning in grief, it was just one more blow. A reminder that vengeance doesn't heal, and violence rarely ends in justice. Sometimes it just keeps going. Tyshawn was just a boy, a son, a student, a kid who loved basketball and sunny afternoons at the park. His life was stolen, not because of anything he did, but because of the hatred and violence that surrounded him. His story is a reminder that behind every true crime story is a name, a face, a future that never got a chance to unfold. We tell these stories not just to entertain, but to highlight, to confront the violence, to question the systems, and to ask you to eventually say never again. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dead Speaks. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to help spread awareness. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.